Bolshevik Revolution, the revolution that betrayed Marx. The 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, an armed insurrection and takeover of Russia led by the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party that created a communist Russia. The revolution was a turning point in the world's perception of Marxism and Leninism, leading to the demonization of the communist ideology and its eventual turn into Stalinism, causing death and destruction. Karl Marx was the writer and philosopher who wrote the Communist Manifesto with Friedrich Engels. He believed that capitalism had major flaws. He devised a system called communism or Marxism in which the workers had the power and believed that the working class should start and lead a revolution. In Russia, the Tsar had all the power and overworked his workers. People thought he was shy, weak, and indecisive. And the people of Russia were upset because there was no food and the war with Germany was not going well. Also, the Tsar, Nicholas II, decided to go to the front of the war in September 1915 to take personal control of the Russian army. Since people didn't want war and didn't like the Tsar's rule, on International Women's Day, people marched on Petrograd to set up a provisional government and take the Tsar out of power. Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, and other Soviets were councils for the working class, were not happy with the unpopular provisional government that didn't take Russia out of World War I and ruled with an iron fist. So, in October 1917, they planned a revolution. This revolution was called the October Revolution and was an armed insurrection. First, Petrograd Soviet, led by Trotsky, voted for a military uprising. After many minor armed attacks and skirmishes broke out, the provisional government shut down many newspapers and closed the city of Petrograd to hopefully stop the revolution. The next day, a large uprising began as a fleet of Bolshevik sailors came into the harbor and many Bolshevik soldiers took arms to help them. Then, the Bolsheviks began to take government buildings. The following day was a turning point. The Winter Palace, the meeting place of the provisional government in Petrograd, at the time the capital of Russia, was taken by the Bolsheviks. Shortly after the Bolshevik Revolution, the Russian Civil War broke out. The White Army, made up of anti-Bolsheviks, fought the Red Army, led by Trotsky, who were fighting for the Bolsheviks. There was also a Green Army, but their force did not play a major role. The Red Army won the war, even though America supported the White Army. This, as well as Lenin's death and Joseph Stalin coming to power, caused the Soviet Union to be what it is remembered today. There were two short-term impacts of the Civil War. Some causes for the Civil War were the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany to end World War I for Russia and the ceding of a lot of Russian land to Germany because of that treaty. There were also several anti-Bolshevik groups that formed, including monarchists, less radical socialists, and others who just didn't like Bolshevik rule. In addition, some returning soldiers were unhappy and did not want World War I to end. The other short-term impact was the oppression of the civilians and workers, especially the people of the Eastern Bloc. There was a lack of freedom of speech, and there were murders of advocates of democracy, as well as other civilians. A lack of free speech and oppression of the people of the Eastern Bloc and other minorities. And the other problems in Russia is not what Marxism wanted. At its core, Marxism advocates for the workers, or the proletariat, to have power. Oppression is not Marxism. Democracy is. And it is one of the fundamentals of Marxism. We see fake communism everywhere. with China or North Korea, just to name a few. Just because they are under a communist party does not mean they believe in Marxist views. Back in Russia, as Stalin took over, he enforced Stalinism, an ideology that is very different from Marxism, but is based on Marxism. It oppressed democracy and killed millions. It made Russia close to fascism, if not fascism itself. Although there was no social hierarchy like in fascism, in Stalinism there was much nationalism, and there was also an authoritarian dictatorship. Quick side note, sorry for the interruption. I'd just like to point out that all these countries like China, North Korea, Vietnam, USSR were socialist and communist. But Lenin was hoping to turn the Soviet Union to a communist state before he died. Marx also used socialism and communism interchangeably in his writing. Socialism is similar to communism in the way it wants to destroy capitalism, but socialism wants to distribute the wealth, while communism wants to destroy it. I'll be using the term communism when talking about the USSR because how it referred to itself and what it wanted to be. Alright, back to the regular video. Goodbye. The Revolution and Civil War also influenced the Cold War. This was a political, diplomatic, economic, and ideological war to prove who was a stronger nation between the USSR, a communist nation, and the USA, a mainly capitalist nation. The Cold War impacted America and the world in good ways as well as bad. The competition between nations resulted in the U.S. working hard to put a man on the moon and help make many more technological advancements. The Cold War also created the Red Scare, when many people in America believed that communists had infiltrated their communities and democracy. Ironically, anyone with a different set of views than the norm was considered a communist and the enemy, bringing the way of life in America very close to the Bolshevik way of life. Let me give you an example. This is an excerpt from the article How and What to Tell a Communist. Both types of communists carry on the same work, although the second type cannot let it be known that he is a member. His real value to the party is indoctrinating those unsuspecting people in key positions with the government agencies, schools, unions, and churches with communist philosophies. When a communist goes to work on you, tell him that you are onto him and his dirty game. Tell him further that you think it's your patriotic duty to make his activities known to others and the police. Tell him that you know no tactics are too low for a communist. Lying, cheating, betrayal, ruin, and even murder. Be sure to tell him that America is on alert that his scheme for world domination is doomed to fail. Along with a harsh tone towards communism and the idea that communists only want to indoctrinate you, this article tells you that communism is evil and communists are murderous and devilish without any proof or logic to back it up. Also, at the time, the fear of being called a communist made people want to conform, or basically be like everyone else and not stick out, which of course is sort of the opposite of the idea to be free and be whoever you are. Overall, the Russian Revolution was a turning point in communism that started out in Marxism, where the people had power, and evolved into the elites starting the revolution in Leninism, and then finally turning into Stalinism, being close to fascism and leading to the Red Scare and the fear of communism, and the closed-mindedness to it today. Goodbye.